Hi, welcome to Windows 8 and GameMaker Virtual Machine Setup. The setup to get a full-fledged environment to be able to develop games on Windows 8 using GameMaker Studio is actually pretty easy. You'll need the Windows 8 trial, Yo-Yo Games GameMaker, Microsoft's Pub Center Add SDK, Visual Studio Express for Windows 8, Inkscape for drawing vector graphics, and Oracle's VirtualBox, which is the virtualization software we'll use here, which will run on either a PC or a Mac or Linux, so you can run this on multiple environments. The software packages you'll need to download locally are the Windows 8 trial and VirtualBox. The other packages, Visual Studio Express, GameMaker, Inkscape, and the Add SDK, will be installed from inside of your virtual machine. So let's get started with the Windows 8 trial. I'm going to copy this link out and select the version to download. So if you have a 64-bit system, go ahead and download the 64-bit, otherwise 32-bit. So you'll want to check your version of Windows to see which one you're running as well. You might be on a 64-bit machine, but it's possible you erroneously or for other reasons installed your 32-bit version. So if you are running 64-bit Windows, go ahead and grab the 64-bit version, otherwise grab the 32-bit version. And since I'm running 64-bit, I'm going to grab the 64-bit image. And you're going to have to sign in. Select a couple options here. I'm a Windows 8 developer. And the download starts. It's 3.25 gigs, so definitely allow enough time to download this and set all this up because this will take a little bit to download. So the download has finished. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to the VirtualBox download link at aka.ms/GameDevVirtualBox. And choose the download that's appropriate for your platform. I chose the Windows host version. And I've already done the setup and installation on my machine, so I'm just going to run VirtualBox. And when VirtualBox opens, this is what the interface will look like for the first time. Select New. And you can call this anything, Win8 Dev. This is not the name of the machine itself. This is just how VirtualBox refers to the machine. And choose Windows 8 64-bit if you're on a 64-bit system, and Windows 8 if you're on a 32-bit system. Now, if you're on a 64-bit system and this 64-bit option does not show up, it's possible you have another virtualization software interfering with it. A common cause is if you have the Windows Phone SDK, which uses Hyper-V on the system, that's already essentially using the 64-bit, so you won't see it listed here. So what you can do is say Programs and Features. So search for Program and F, or search for Program under Windows 8 and then go to Settings. And on Programs and Features, and on Windows 7 this will be slightly different on the interface, but you'll still want to get to Programs and Features. And turn Windows Features on or off. And look for Hyper-V. If that's checked, go ahead and try to uncheck that. And then start up VirtualBox again. And you then should see the 64-bit option available. So I'm going to go ahead and say Next. And choose however much RAM is appropriate that you have on your system. So I've got 8 gigs of RAM on my system, and it tells you the recommended memory size is 2 gigs. If you want a little bit more power, you can crank that up a bit. Just don't go into your red, and I wouldn't go right on the line either. Give it a little bit of buffer, depending if you have other things running on your system as well. And for your virtual hard drive, I'm going to choose the default of 25 gigs. Now this does not create a 25 gig file in your system right now. It's a dynamically expanding file. So I'll say Create. And you can choose a whole bunch of different types of disk images. If you want to export this image to another platform, for example to Parallels or to any of the other ones listed here, then you can choose a different type of image. I'm just going to choose the native built-in VirtualBox disk image, which is the default option. And you can see dynamically allocated is the option for storage on a physical hard drive, which means your physical drive space will, your virtual drive will expand on your physical drive as it requires more space. Although as a notice, it will not shrink automatically when space is freed. That you'll have to do manually. So I'll go ahead and accept the default options here. And now we have a system. So we have not installed Windows on this. So the trick there is double click on it or click on Start. And it says, please select a virtual optical disk file or physical optical drive containing a disk to start. So let's go ahead and browse to that ISO file that we downloaded. And on mine, that was desktop installs. Go ahead and select the image file. That's the ISO that you just downloaded. That took the 3¼ gigs for the Windows 8 trial. And select Start. You'll get a couple dialogues here. The Guess OS does not support mouse point integration. You can just say OK to that. And you're going to want to choose the defaults to get started here. So I'm going to choose English as a default. And go ahead and install now. Follow through the setup on your system. And one thing to note that with VirtualBox, by default, you can't do USB drive sharing. You actually have to install the additions pack and enable USB support for that machine. So earlier I mentioned about that these 2 downloads were done on your system and the rest were done in the virtual machine. I would still do that. I would not try to download these on your local machine and then move them to the VirtualBox instance. You could do that. You'll just have to enable USB support, or you'll have to copy them from a network location inside of VirtualBox. So it's just easiest if you download these to your local machine and then wait till your virtual instance is set up and then download these files. Accept the license terms. Go ahead and read them, of course. And I'm going to do install Windows only on the only drive that's available. Your computer will restart several times. It says this might take a while, and that means only your virtual instance is going to restart several times. So I'll go ahead and fast forward this now and wait until this finishes, and then we'll resume. When prompted, I just used the name Win8Dev for this machine. And you can choose Express settings or customize. Express settings will download updates when they're available. I'm going to turn off automatic updates just for the brevity of this demo. And accept the rest of the defaults. So you can go ahead and sign in with a live ID, or you can sign in without a Microsoft account. And by live ID, it's also called a Microsoft account. So in this case, I'm just going to select sign in without a Microsoft account, but if you have one, go ahead and sign in with it. That way your options between systems can travel between your systems, and it's an enhanced user experience. So in this case, I'm going to say local account, and I'll call it Win8Dev user. All right, now Windows 8 is finishing its configuration, and we'll resume as soon as that's done. The machine is all set up and ready to go. So what I want to do now, and the reason I'm seeing the scroll bars is because I'm running at a fairly minimal resolution just so I can record okay. But you can adjust your screen so you don't see the scroll bars. So go to the desktop and load up Internet Explorer. And then we're going to want to install ak.ms/game dev vs express. So that's Visual Studio Express. And go ahead and download that. Visual Studio Express for Windows 8 install now. Scroll down and we see the run. And the difference between these two install options, this is the online setup and this is the download everything first and then setup. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. And install, and we will resume as soon as this install is finished. Once the Visual Studio setup has completed, click Launch, and when Visual Studio comes up, you'll have to register online for a product key. So Visual Studio Express is a free product, but you do have to register. So sign in with your Microsoft ID. And you will get a key that you can use. And I'm using this for private use. Okay, here's the product key. So copy that out and paste that into Visual Studio. Validates the product key, and you are all set to go. Click Close. And it's going to configure it for the first time. So while that's going on, let's go ahead and download the other things that we need. So we need GameMaker. So we'll go back to Internet Explorer and trigger off this download. That was aka-.ms/game-dev-game-maker. Download GameMaker Studio, there's a free edition which does allow you to do Windows 8 development. And you want to run or save it? Let's go ahead and run this. Okay, so while that's downloading, let's go back to Visual Studio. Visual Studio has now prompted us to get a developer license for Windows 8. This is different than a Windows Store account. So your Windows Store account, essentially a Windows Store token, is what you use to get a Windows Store account to be able to publish to the Windows Store. This developer license is separate. This is a free license, and you just have to renew it once every 3 months or so. So go ahead and click on the agree and yes after you read the license terms. And you want to sign in with your live ID, because that's what's going to be tied to your developer account. For those that like scripting, there also is a PowerShell scriptlet to be able to do this from the command line. However, it's just easiest to let Visual Studio prompt you and fill in the dialogue there, in my opinion. And you are all set for Windows 8 development. So if you go to New Project, you can see you can do C++, C#, you can do native HTML JavaScript applications. So if you want to use that for your Windows 8 development, you are set. GameMaker exports an actual JavaScript project and compiles it. So that's why we do the Visual Studio install on the system. So we can actually close Visual Studio. We won't need it anymore for this. And our GameMaker download is currently going on. So let's go ahead and download the next tool as well while that's finishing. We're going to get GameDev Inkscape, aka.ms/GameDev Inkscape. And we want the Windows installer. And I'm going to scroll down, see if this is actually prompting me. If not, there we go. So I'll say go ahead and run that when you're done. And the last download that we'll need is the add SDK. So that's GameDev add SDK. aka.ms GameDev add SDK. And the download link is halfway down the page here. Download the advertising SDK. Click on that. And you'll see the bottom. Do you want to run or save this? Let's go ahead and run it. So our advertising SDK is the smallest one that comes up first. Go ahead and install that. Read your license terms. Install. GameMaker Studio had finished, so that one actually is prompting me now. So I'll say I agree. Next, accept the defaults. And Inkscape should be done here in just 1 second, and then we'll run that install. It's the downloading that by far takes the longest. The actual setup is pretty fast. I'm going to wait to complete Inkscape. I don't like having multiple installs running at the same time. Sometimes that's not supported. So this GameMaker finished. And go ahead and start it. And one thing you'll notice, GameMaker comes up and says, hey, you need .NET Framework 3.5, which was not included in the base Windows 8 image, which has .NET 4.5 installed by default. So go ahead and say download and install this feature. And it will automatically pull that down from the net and install it for you. So while that's downloading, I'm going to go ahead and finish the Inkscape install. Inkscape has completed installation, and in the background, the .NET Framework 3.5 has installed and completed as well. So let's go ahead and launch Inkscape. And there you have it. So this will be used during the demo. And let's go ahead and run GameMaker. And there's one important part on GameMaker. So when you run it for the first time, you'll see it does some extracting. So let that finish, and we should be prompted whether we not want the beta channel or stable channel. The beta channel is how we're delivering some modified Windows 8 compatible templates. So once that prompts us, we'll be sure to select beta channel. And that is the default that's chosen. So choose update channel, beta channel, we'll just say OK. And then you're prompted on your license. So I'm just going to say, actually on a new version being available, for now I'm just going to say remind me later. And I'm going to say use the free edition. And that will contact the license server and complete your free licensing. GameMaker needs to be restarted for your license to take effect. No problem. Let's go ahead and run it again. And for those new to Windows 8, if you didn't catch what I was doing there, I simply hit the window key, type game, and there's the programs that come up. Or if you want to run Visual Studio, just simply hit the window key and type VIS. Actually, Visual Studio Express is VS Express. So you'll type VS and you can see VS Express for Windows 8 there. And there you have it. You should be all set to go for Windows 8 and GameMaker setup. You have Inkscape on the system, Visual Studio Express, and the Microsoft Pub Center Add SDK, and you should be all set to go. Good luck with your game development.